The last room she locked. I stared at the brass key in my palm, its weight somehow heavier than it should have been. 23 years I'd lived in this house, and I'd never seen this key before. Found it taped under Mom's jewelry box drawer. A drawer I'd opened 1,000 times as a kid, sneaking her lipstick when she wasn't looking. But this key? Never. The funeral was 3 days ago. The house still smelled like the lilies people brought, that sickly sweet smell that makes you want to throw up but also makes you cry at the same time. I'd been going through Mom's things, trying to figure out what to keep, what to donate, what to burn. You know how it is when someone dies. Suddenly, every coffee mug becomes a relic. I held the key up to the light streaming through her bedroom window. It was old, definitely not a modern house key. More like something you'd use for a chest or a cabinet. Ornate little swirls carved into the metal. The kind of key that opens something important. That's when I noticed the paper wrapped around it. Tiny, folded so small I almost missed it. My fingers shook as I unfolded it. Mom's handwriting, spidery and faint. For Emily. When you're ready to know. Ready to know what? I looked around the room like the walls might give me answers. This was Mom's sanctuary. The place she'd retreat to when Dad got too loud, when bills piled up, when life got overwhelming. I'd spend hours in here as a kid, braiding her hair, painting her nails, listening to her stories about growing up poor in Chinatown. Or what I thought were her stories. The key felt warm in my palm now, like it was alive. I walked through the house, trying every lock I could find. The china cabinet, no. The old secretary desk, no. The file cabinet in the basement, no. That's when I remembered the door. Second floor, end of the hallway. I'd asked about it exactly once when I was maybe 7 years old. What's in there, Mom? She'd looked at me with this expression I couldn't read then but can name now. Panic.
Pure panic.
Just storage, sweetheart. Nothing interesting. But kids don't buy that, do they? I'd tried the handle a few times over the years. Always locked. Eventually I forgot about it, the way you forget about background noise until someone points it out. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, my heart doing this weird flutter thing it does when I'm nervous. The door was painted the same cream color as the rest of the hallway, but up close I could see it was older. Solid wood, not the hollow core doors in the rest of the house. The handle was brass, tarnished with age. I slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. The lock turned with a soft click that seemed to echo through the whole house. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was bigger than I expected. Maybe 12 by 15 feet, with a single window that had been painted black from the inside. The only light came from the hallway behind me, casting long shadows across the space. But it wasn't empty storage. There was a desk against one wall, covered in papers.
Un filing cabinet.
A bulletin board covered in photographs, but not family photos. These were surveillance photos. Black and white, taken from a distance. People I didn't recognize going about their daily lives. And in the center of it all, a chair. Just a simple wooden chair, positioned to face the desk. I stepped closer, my footsteps unnaturally loud on the hardwood floor. The papers on the desk were organized in neat stacks, each stack held down by a different colored paperweight. Red, blue, green, yellow. Like a filing system. I picked up the top sheet from the red stack. It was a birth certificate. Not mine. Not Mom's. Someone named Margaret Chen, born in 1954 in San Francisco. But the photo paper-clipped to it was definitely my mother. Younger, maybe in her 20s, but unmistakably her. My hands were shaking as I reached for the blue stack. Another birth certificate. Susan Wong, born 1956. In Los Angeles. Same photo of Mom, just with different hair. Green stack. Linda Kim, born 1958 in Seattle. Yellow stack. Patricia Nguyen, born 1960 in Portland. 4 different names. 4 different birth years. 4 different cities. All my mother. I sank into the chair, and that's when I noticed the journal. Leather-bound, sitting right in the center of the desk like it had been waiting for me. I opened it to the first page, and Mom's handwriting filled the lines. If Emily is reading this, then I'm gone, and she's found what I never wanted her to find. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. But you need to know who your mother really was. My name is Emily Cho. I'm 31 years old, and up until 3 days ago, I thought I knew exactly who I was. Daughter of Robert and Helen Cho. Middle child between my older brother David and younger sister Jessica. Born and raised in Portland, Oregon, in the same house where I found that key. I was the responsible one. Always was. When Dad's drinking got bad, I was the one who drove him to rehab. When Mom got overwhelmed with bills, I was the one who helped her organize the checkbook. When David dropped out of college to pursue his art, I was the one who helped him find a job. When Jessica got pregnant at 17, I was the one who held her hand at the clinic. Being the responsible one means people tell you things. Secrets. Problems. The stuff they can't handle on their own. But apparently, my mother never told me the biggest secret of all. I grew up hearing stories about her childhood in San Francisco's Chinatown. How her parents ran a small grocery store. How she worked there after school, helping customers, learning English by watching American TV shows. How she met my father at a community college in 1989, fell in love, and moved to Portland to start fresh. Sweet story, right? The kind of immigrant success story that makes you proud of your heritage. Except now I was staring at 4 different birth certificates for different names for different cities. And none of them mentioned growing up in Chinatown. I flipped through the journal, my hands trembling. The entries went back years. Decades. The first one was dated 1987, 2 years before she supposedly met my father. New identity secured. Margaret Chin documentation complete. San Francisco cover story established. Need to maintain distance from previous contacts. Previous contacts? Cover story? I kept reading. 1989. Met Robert at Portland Community College. He's kind, stable, asks no questions about my past. Perfect. Perfect. Like my father was just a convenient prop in whatever game she was playing. The entries got more detailed as they went on. Notes about maintaining her Helen Cho identity. Reminders about the stories she'd told people. Details about the fake childhood she'd constructed. Emily asked about grandparents again today. Told her they died when she was too young to remember. Hate lying to her, but it's safer this way. Safer? Safer from what? I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. My legs felt wobbly, like I might collapse. Everything I knew about my life was built on lies. Every family story, every tradition, every piece of my identity, all of it fake. I walked to the filing cabinet and pulled open the top drawer. More documents. Social security cards with different names. Driver's licenses from different states. Bank statements showing accounts I'd never heard of. And photographs. Lots of them. These weren't the surveillance photos from the bulletin board. These were personal. Mom with people I didn't recognize. Mom in cities I'd never been to. Mom looking happy and relaxed in ways I'd never seen her. In one photo, she was standing next to a man who definitely wasn't my father. He was Asian, maybe Chinese, wearing an expensive suit. They were in front of what looked like a restaurant, and she was laughing at something he'd said. Really laughing, not the polite smile she usually wore. I flipped the photo over. Someone had written Danny and Lynn, 1985, in blue ink.
Lynn.
Not Helen. Not Margaret or Susan or Linda or Patricia. Lynn. I sank back into the chair, holding the photo with shaking hands. Who is this woman? This person who'd raised me, cooked my meals, bandaged my scraped knees, taught me how to drive? That's when I heard the front door open downstairs. Emily. Jessica's voice carried up the stairs. Are you here? I brought Chinese food. I shoved the journal and photos back onto the desk, my heart pounding. Jessica couldn't see this.
Not yet.
I didn't even understand it myself. Coming. I called back, my voice cracking slightly. I stepped out of the room and locked the door behind me, sliding the key into my pocket. But as I walked down the hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. The house felt different. The family photos on the walls looked different. Even my own reflection in the hallway mirror looked different. Because now I knew the truth. The woman I'd called Mom my entire life was someone else entirely. and I had no idea who. Jessica was sitting at the kitchen table, unpacking containers of lo mein and General Tso's chicken. She looked up when I walked in, and I could see the concern in her eyes. We'd always been close, despite the 4-year age gap. She could read my moods better than anyone. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, setting down the chopsticks. "Are you okay?" I wasn't okay. I was about as far from okay as a person could get. "But how do you tell your sister that everything she believes about her family is a lie?" "Just tired," I said, sitting down across from her. "Going through Mom's things is harder than I thought it would be." She nodded, pushing a container of fried rice toward me. "I know. I tried to clean out her closet yesterday and ended up crying on the floor for an hour." We ate in silence for a few minutes. The food tasted like cardboard, but I forced myself to swallow. Jessica kept glancing at me, and I could tell she wanted to say something. "Emily," she finally said, "I need to ask you something. About Mom's will." I looked up. "What about it? Have you seen it? The actual document?" I shook my head. "Mr. Peterson said he'd have everything ready by next week."
Why?
Jessica pushed her food around with her chopsticks, not meeting my eyes. "It's just, David called me yesterday. He said he talked to Peterson's office, and they told him Mom changed her will 6 months ago." "Changed it how?" "That's what I want to know. David thinks she might have left everything to you." I set down my chopsticks. "Why would she do that?" "Because you're the one who took care of her. You're the one who was here when she got sick. You're the one who—" "Jessica, stop." I could hear the edge in my voice. "I don't want Mom's money. I don't want any of it." But even as I said it, I was thinking about the room upstairs, about the journal and the fake birth certificates and the photographs of a woman I didn't recognize. Maybe the will wasn't about money. Maybe it was about secrets. That night, after Jessica left, I went back to the room. I sat in that chair and read the journal from beginning to end. It took me 3 hours, and by the time I was done, I felt like I was drowning. The entries painted a picture of a woman living in constant fear. She'd change her name, move to a new city, establish a new identity. But something would always go wrong. A former associate would track her down. A business deal would fall through. Someone would get suspicious. And then she'd run again. The entries from 1987 to 1989 were different, though. More hopeful. She'd found a way to disappear completely, to become someone else. Helen Cho, the quiet woman who married a kind man and raised 3 children in Portland, Oregon. But even after all those years, she never felt safe. There were entries about nightmares, about checking the locks multiple times before bed, about panic attacks when strangers knocked on the door. Emily turned 16 today, read one entry from 2008. "She's so beautiful, so smart. Sometimes I look at her, and I'm terrified that I've passed my sins onto her, that they'll find her because of me."
They? Who was they?
I kept reading, looking for clues. The entries got more paranoid as Mom got older. She started noticing things, cars that seemed to follow her, phone calls where no one spoke, mail that looked like it had been opened and resealed. "I think they've found me," she wrote in 2019. "After all these years, they've found me. I need to make plans. I need to protect my children." The last entry was dated just 2 months before she died. "Made arrangements with Peterson. If something happens to me, Emily will inherit everything. She's the only one strong enough to handle the truth. I pray she forgives me." I closed the journal and stared at the bulletin board. All those surveillance photos of strangers. But maybe they weren't strangers. Maybe they were people she was watching, people she was afraid of. Or maybe they were people she was working with. I walked to the window and pulled back the black paint with my fingernail. Underneath, I could see the street. The same street I'd walked down thousands of times. The same street where I'd learned to ride a bike, where I'd kissed my first boyfriend, where I'd thought I was safe. But I wasn't safe. None of us were. Because whoever my mother had been running from, they were still out there. And now, they might be coming for me. 3 days later, I was sitting in Robert Peterson's law office, staring at documents that made no sense. Peterson was Dad's age, with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He'd been the family lawyer for as long as I could remember. "I have to say, Emily, your mother's will is quite unusual," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "Most people don't structure their estates this way." I opened the folder. The will was 23 pages long, which seemed excessive for a woman who'd lived modestly her entire life. But as I read through it, I realized why it was so complex. Mom hadn't just left me the house. She'd left me everything. Bank accounts I'd never heard of. Investment portfolios worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Property in 3 different states. And something called the Lin Family Trust, which apparently owned a restaurant in San Francisco. "Mr. Peterson," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "where did all this money come from?" He leaned back in his chair, looking uncomfortable. "Your mother was very private about her financial affairs. She managed most of her investments herself. I helped her with the legal documentation, but she never explained the source of her wealth." "This trust," I said, pointing to the page. "The Lin Family Trust. Do you know anything about it?" "She acquired it about 15 years ago. It generates significant income, about $30,000 a year in dividends. But I've never seen any paperwork about the actual business."
Lynn.
The name from the photograph. The name that wasn't Helen or Margaret or Susan or Linda or Patricia. "There's something else," Peterson said. He pulled out another folder, this one thicker. "Your mother left specific instructions for me to give you this if anything happened to her. She said you'd understand what to do with it." I took the folder with trembling hands. Inside were more documents, but these weren't legal papers. They were records. Financial transactions going back decades. Names, dates, amounts of money. And at the bottom of each page, a signature. Lin Chin. "Mr. Peterson," I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Did my mother ever mention being afraid of someone?" He was quiet for a long moment. She was always cautious, very concerned about privacy. She insisted on conducting all our business in person, never over the phone or email, and she always paid in cash. "Did she ever mention anyone from her past? Anyone who might have been looking for her?" Peterson's expression grew more serious. "Emily, I think there are things about your mother's life that she never told anyone, including you. My advice would be to leave the past alone. Take the inheritance, live your life, and don't ask too many questions." But I was done taking advice. I was done being protected. I left Peterson's office with more questions than answers. That night, I called Jessica and asked her to meet me at the house. I decided to tell her everything. She deserved to know the truth. She arrived at 8 o'clock, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the worried expression that had become her default since Mom's death. "Okay," she said, settling onto the couch. "What's going on? You sounded weird on the phone." I handed her a glass of wine and sat down beside her. "Jess, I need to tell you something about Mom. About our family. And I need you to promise me you'll listen to everything before you react." She took a sip of wine, her eyes never leaving my face. "You're scaring me." "I'm scared too." I told her about the room, about the journal and the fake birth certificates and the photographs. I told her about the will and the money and the Lin Family Trust. I told her everything. Jessica listened without interrupting, but I could see her face growing paler with each revelation. When I finished, she set down her wine glass and stared at me. "You're saying Mom was some kind of criminal?" "I don't know what she was. But she wasn't who we thought she was." Jessica stood up and started pacing. "This is insane, Emily. You're talking about our mother. The woman who made us lunch every day for 12 years. The woman who sat up with us when we were sick. The woman who lied to us about everything," I said quietly. Jessica stopped pacing. "Show me." I led her upstairs to the locked room. She stood in the doorway, looking at the desk and the filing cabinet and the bulletin board covered in photographs. "Oh my God," she whispered. She walked to the desk and picked up one of the birth certificates. "Margaret Chen. This is Mom's picture. There are 4 of them, 4 different identities." Jessica sank into the chair, holding the document with shaking hands. Who was she, Emily? Who was our mother? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. The next morning, I drove to San Francisco. Jessica had wanted to come with me, but I'd convinced her to stay home. Someone needed to keep an eye on the house, and I wasn't sure what I might find. The Lin Family Trust owned a restaurant in Chinatown called Golden Dragon. It was tucked between a souvenir shop and a dim sum place on Grand Avenue, the kind of narrow storefront that looked like it had been there forever. I stood across the street for 20 minutes, watching. The lunch crowd was just starting to arrive, tourists mostly, but also some locals who seemed to know the staff. Nothing looked suspicious or dangerous. Just a normal Chinese restaurant. I crossed the street and pushed open the door. The interior was small but elegant, with red lanterns hanging from the ceiling and traditional Chinese artwork on the walls. The smell of garlic and ginger filled the air. "Can I help you?" A woman in her 50s approached me. She was petite, with graying hair pulled back in a bun. Her English was accented but clear. "I'm looking for information about the owner," I said. "Lin Chen." The woman's expression changed instantly. The polite smile disappeared, replaced by something that looked like fear. "There is no Lin Chen here," she said quickly. "You must be mistaken. I have documents that show Lin Chen owns this restaurant through a trust." The woman glanced around the restaurant, then stepped closer to me. "You need to leave," she said in a low voice.
Now.
"I'm not here to cause trouble. Lin Chen was my mother. She died 2 weeks ago." The woman's eyes widened. "Your mother? Helen Cho. But I think her real name was Lin Chen." The woman stared at me for a long moment, then made a decision. "Follow me." She led me through the restaurant to a small office in the back. The walls were covered with photographs, family photos, restaurant events, community celebrations. And in several of them, I recognized a face. Mom. Looking younger, happier, more relaxed than I'd ever seen her. "Sit," the woman said, closing the door behind us. "My name is Mei Wang. I was Lin's business partner for many years." "What happened to her? Why did she leave?" Mei sat down behind the desk, her hands folded in her lap. "Your mother was involved with some very dangerous people. People who don't forget and don't forgive." "What kind of people?" "The kind who make problems disappear. The kind who collect debts that can never be fully paid." I felt a chill run down my spine. Was she in the mob? Mei shook her head. "Not exactly. But she worked for them. She was very smart with money, very good at making transactions that couldn't be traced. She helped them move money from one place to another, clean money that was dirty. Money laundering."
Yes.
"For many years, she was very successful. But then something went wrong. A deal that was supposed to be simple became complicated. People got hurt. And your mother, she kept money that wasn't hers to keep." "How much money?" Mei was quiet for a moment. $2 million. I felt like I couldn't breathe. $2 million? She was supposed to transfer it to an account in Hong Kong.
But the account was seized by the FBI.
Your mother had already taken her fee, but she couldn't return the principal. The people who owned that money, they don't accept explanations. So she ran. She disappeared. Changed her name, moved across the country, started a new life.
But she kept this restaurant.
She sent money every month to help maintain it, to keep the staff employed. I think she hoped someday she could come back. Why didn't they find her? Mei smiled sadly. Your mother was very smart. She knew how to disappear completely. And she was lucky. The man who was hunting her, the man who owned that money, he died in a car accident in 1995. Everyone thought the debt died with him. But it didn't.
No.
The debt passed to his son. And his son, he's been looking for your mother for 25 years. I stood up, my legs shaking. Is he still looking? Mei nodded. He hired a private investigator 3 months ago. I think that's why your mother got sick. The stress, the fear of being found after all these years, it destroyed her. What does he want? The money. With interest. Your mother owed $2 million in 1991. Today, with compound interest, that debt is worth almost $8 million. I felt like the room was spinning. I don't have $8 million, but you have your mother's assets. The house, the investments, this restaurant. He'll come for all of it. When? May looked at me with pity in her eyes.
Soon.
Very soon. I drove back to Portland in a daze. $8 million. Even if I sold everything, the house, the investments, the restaurant, I'd be lucky to raise $3 million. And that was assuming I could find buyers quickly. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the lies. My entire life had been built on a foundation of deception. Every family dinner, every birthday party, every quiet moment with my mother, all of it had been theater. She'd been playing a role, and I'd been too naive to see it. I pulled into the driveway at home and sat in the car for a few minutes, trying to process everything May had told me. The house looked the same as always. White siding, blue shutters, the flower garden Mom had tended every spring. It looked safe and normal and familiar. But it wasn't safe. Nothing was safe. Anymore. I walked inside and found Jessica in the kitchen, making coffee. She looked up when I entered, and I could see the question in her eyes. Well, she said. I told her everything. About the restaurant, about May Wong, about the money Mom had stolen and the man who was hunting her. Jessica listened without interrupting, but I could see her growing more upset with each detail. $8 million, she said when I finished. Emily, we have to go to the police. And tell them what? That our dead mother was a money launderer who stole from the mob.
Yes.
Exactly that. Let them handle it. I shook my head. The police can't protect us from this. These aren't the kind of people who care about restraining orders or witness protection programs. Jessica stared at me. So, what do we do? I don't know yet. But we need to be smart about this. We need to.
The doorbell rang.
We both froze. It was 8 o'clock at night. People don't just drop by at 8 o'clock at night. Are you expecting someone? Jessica whispered. I shook my head. We crept to the front window and peered through the curtains. A black sedan was parked in the driveway. A man in a dark suit was standing on the porch, his back to us. The doorbell rang again. Should we call the police? Jessica asked. Before I could answer, the man turned around. He was Asian, maybe 40 years old, with graying hair and an expensive suit. He looked directly at the window where we were hiding and smiled. Then he held up a manila envelope and pointed to the door. I think he knows we're here, I said. Jessica grabbed my arm. Emily, don't answer it. Let's go out the back door. Let's get in your car and drive away. But I was tired of running. Tired of being afraid. Tired of living in the shadow of my mother's lies. I walked to the front door and opened it. Good evening, the man said. His voice was cultured, educated. My name is Daniel Chen. I believe you knew my father.
Chen.
The same last name as 3 of my mother's fake identities. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. He smiled. May I come in? I have some things that belong to you. I looked at the envelope in his hand. It was thick, like it contained documents or photographs. What kind of things? Pictures of your mother. From before she became Helen Cho. I think you'll find them very interesting. I should have closed the door. I should have called the police. I should have done anything except what I did. But I stepped aside and let him in. Daniel Chen walked into my living room like he owned the place. He looked around, taking in the family photos on the mantel, the comfortable furniture, the life my mother had built with her stolen money. Nice house, he said. Your mother had good taste. Jessica appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Emily, what are you doing? This is my sister Jessica, I said. Jessica, this is Daniel Chen. He says he knew Mom. Daniel smiled at Jessica. Please sit down. Both of you. We have a lot to discuss. We sat on the couch. Daniel took the armchair across from us, the same chair where Mom used to sit when she watched TV in the evenings. Your mother was a remarkable woman, he said, opening the envelope. Very smart, very resourceful. She worked for my father for almost 10 years. He pulled out a photograph and handed it to me. It was Mom, but younger than I'd ever seen her. She was maybe 25, wearing a business suit, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. That's my father, Daniel said. Thomas Chen. He died in 1995. I'm sorry for your loss, I said automatically. Daniel laughed. Don't be. He was not a good man. But he was a successful businessman, and your mother helped him become very wealthy. He pulled out another photograph. This one showed Mom at what looked like a party, surrounded by people in expensive clothes. She was laughing, holding a glass of champagne. She was happy then, Daniel said. Before things went wrong. What went wrong? Jessica asked. Daniel's expression grew serious. Your mother stole from us. $2 million that was supposed to go to Hong Kong. She kept it and disappeared.
She didn't steal it, I said.
The FBI seized the account. She couldn't complete the transfer. Ah, Daniel said.
So, you know about that. Good.
That saves us some time. He pulled out a folder and set it on the coffee table. Your mother's debt, with interest, now totals $8,400,000. I'm here to collect. I stared at the folder. I don't have that kind of money, but you have assets. This house is worth about $400,000. Your mother's investment portfolio is worth approximately $2 million. The restaurant in San Francisco is worth another $1 million. That's $3.4 million. Still short, but it's a start. And if I refuse? Daniel smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. He stood up and walked to the mantel, picking up a framed photo of our family from last Christmas. You have a beautiful family, he said. Your brother David lives in Seattle, correct? And Jessica here just started a new job at the elementary school. The threat was clear. He wasn't just coming for the money. He was coming for all of us. Section, Part 5, Rock Bottom and Awakening. That night, after Daniel Chen left, I sat in my mother's locked room and cried. Not the quiet, dignified tears I'd shed at the funeral, but ugly, desperate sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Jessica had gone home to her apartment, too shaken to stay in the house. I told her to pack a bag and stay with friends for a few days, just until I figured out what to do. But what was I supposed to do? I was trapped in a nightmare that wasn't even mine. My mother's sins had become my inheritance, and there was no way out. I picked up the journal and read through it again, looking for something I might have missed. Some clue about where the money might be hidden, some secret account or safety deposit box that could save us. But there was nothing. Just the rambling thoughts of a woman who'd spent 25 years looking over her shoulder, waiting for the past to catch up with her. I never wanted this life for my children, she'd written in one of the later entries. I wanted them to be normal, to be safe, to have the childhood I never had. But I was selfish. I kept the money because I was afraid of being poor again. And now they'll pay for my mistakes. I hurled the journal across the room. It hit the wall and fell to the floor, pages scattered. Why didn't you tell me? I screamed at the empty room. Why didn't you prepare me for this?
But I knew why.
She'd hoped Daniel Chen would never find her. She'd hoped the past would stay buried. She'd hoped her children could live normal lives, free from the consequences of her choices. She'd been wrong about that. Dead wrong. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. It was past midnight and the neighborhood was quiet. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching the house. That Daniel Chen or one of his associates was out there, waiting. I pulled out my phone and started to call the police. But what would I tell them? That a man had come to my house and asked for money? That wasn't a crime. That he'd made vague threats about my family? Good luck proving that. I set the phone down and walked back to the desk. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. The bottom drawer of the filing cabinet was slightly open, as if someone had been through it recently. I pulled it open and found it mostly empty. Just a few old tax returns and some insurance documents. But at the very back, tucked behind a folder, was a small key. Not like the brass key that had opened the room. This one was smaller, newer. The kind of key that might open a safety deposit box. I turned it over in my palm. There was a number etched into the metal. 1247. My heart started pounding. Maybe there was something after all. Maybe Mom had left me one last gift. I grabbed the folder of documents Daniel Chen had left behind and started looking through them. He'd done his research. There were copies of bank statements, property records, investment portfolios. Everything my mother had owned, cataloged, and appraised. But there was no mention of a safety deposit box. I went to my computer and started searching for banks in Portland that used 4-digit box numbers. There were dozens of them. It would take days to check them all, and I probably didn't have days. Then I remembered something. When I was a kid, Mom always did her banking at Columbia River Bank on Hawthorne Boulevard. It was a small, local bank that had been around for decades. She'd take me with her sometimes when she made deposits, and I'd get a lollipop from the teller. I looked up their website. They offered safety deposit box services, and their numbering system started at 1,000. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot I had. I drove to the bank first thing in the morning. The lobby was small and quiet, with only a few customers conducting business. I approached the customer service desk and asked to speak to someone about a safety deposit box. "Do you have the key and identification?" the woman asked. I showed her my driver's license and the small key. She looked at both, then typed something into her computer. "I'm sorry," she said. "This box is registered to Helen Cho. Are you an authorized user?" Helen Cho was my mother. She died 2 weeks ago. The woman's expression softened. "I'm sorry for your loss. Do you have a death certificate and proof that you're the executor of her estate?" I pulled out the documents Peterson had given me. She reviewed them carefully, then nodded. "Follow me." She led me to a secure area in the back of the bank. Safety deposit boxes lined the walls, each one sealed with 2 locks. She inserted her key into box 1247, then gestured for me to insert mine. The box slid out with a soft metallic sound. "I'll give you some privacy," she said, leaving me alone in the small room. I lifted the lid with shaking hands. Inside was a single manila envelope, thick and heavy. I opened it and found myself staring at more money than I'd ever seen in one place. Stacks of $100 bills, neatly bundled with rubber bands. And a note in my mother's handwriting. "Emily, this is what's left of the money I took. $847,000. It's not enough to pay the debt, but it's a start. Use it to protect yourself and your siblings. I'm sorry I couldn't be braver. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth. But you're stronger than I ever was. You'll find a way, Mom." I counted the money twice. $847,000. Combined with the other assets, it might be enough to negotiate with Daniel Chen. Maybe not enough to pay the full debt, but enough to buy time. For the first time in days, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Section, Part 6, Resolution and Final Insight. I called Daniel Chen from the bank parking lot. He answered on the first ring, like he'd been waiting for my call. "Emily," he said, "I was wondering when I'd hear from you. I want to make a deal."
"I'm listening."
I found some of the money, almost $1 million in cash, plus the house, the investments, the restaurant. All of it combined, I can get you about $4.5 million. There was a long pause. "That's roughly half of what you owe." "It's what I have. Take it or leave it." "And if I leave it?" I took a deep breath. "Then I go to the FBI. I tell them everything about your father's business, about the money laundering, about the threats you've made against my family. I have all my mother's records, Daniel. Names, dates, account numbers. Enough to keep federal prosecutors busy for years." Another pause. "You're bluffing. Try me."
I
could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. I counted the seconds, waiting for his response. $5 million, he said finally. "That's my final offer. You find another 500,000, and we call it even. 4.5. That's all I can raise. Then we have a problem." "No," I said. "We have a solution. $4.5 million and I disappear. Just like my mother did. New name, new city, new life. You'll never see me again, and you'll never have to worry about those FBI files surfacing." It was a lie. I had no intention of disappearing. But Daniel Chen didn't know that. "Where do you want to meet?" he asked. 2 days later, I sat in a downtown Portland coffee shop, waiting. Jessica was at a table across the room, pretending to read a book. David had driven down from Seattle and was sitting at the counter, watching the door. I'd told them both to stay away, but they'd refused to let me handle this alone. We were family. Whatever happened, we'd face it together. Daniel Chin arrived exactly on time, carrying a leather briefcase. He sat down across from me and smiled. Do you have the money? I nodded toward a duffel bag at my feet. 4.5 million. Just like we agreed. He reached for the bag, but I pulled it back. Documentation first, I said. I want something in writing that says this settles the debt. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a simple contract, stating that the debt incurred by Lin Chen in 1991 was considered paid in full upon receipt of $4.5 million. I read it carefully, then signed it. He signed it too, then reached for the bag again. Not so fast, I said. There's something else. His expression darkened. We had a deal. We did. But I want to make sure you understand the terms. You take this money, and you disappear from our lives. Forever. You don't contact me, you don't contact my siblings, you don't come back asking for more. This ends today. Or what? I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. It was a recording app, and it had been running the entire time we'd been talking. Or I send this recording to the FBI, along with all of my mother's files. Your father might be dead, Daniel, but you're not. And I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations hasn't run out on conspiracy to commit money laundering. He stared at the phone, then at me. You recorded me? I recorded everything. Your visit to my house, your threats against my family, this conversation. Insurance, in case you decide to come back for seconds. Daniel Chin was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed. You know what? I respect that. Your mother was smart, but she was weak. She ran instead of fighting. But you're different. He took the bag and stood up. Congratulations, Emily. You've just bought your freedom. He walked out of the coffee shop and I never saw him again. That was 6 months ago. I sold the house and the restaurant, just like I'd planned. But I didn't disappear. Instead, I used the money to start a foundation for families affected by financial crimes. Turns out there are a lot of people like me, people whose parents got involved with the wrong crowd, people whose lives were turned upside down by someone else's bad decisions. I still think about my mother every day. I still wonder who she really was beyond the lies and the false identities. But I've made peace with the fact that I'll never know the whole truth. Some secrets die with the people who keep them. What I do know is this: we are not defined by our parents' mistakes. We are not prisoners of their choices. We can choose to break the cycle, to be better than what came before us. My mother lived in fear for 25 years. She ran from her past, hid from her truth, and died carrying the weight of secrets that weren't meant to be borne alone. But I chose differently. I chose to fight. And sometimes that makes all the difference. The locked room is empty now. I cleaned it out before I sold the house, burned the fake documents, destroyed the surveillance photos. But I kept the journal. Not because I want to remember my mother's lies, but because I want to remember the lesson she taught me without meaning to. The truth will set you free. But first you have to be brave enough to face it. And sometimes you have to be brave enough to make others face it too.